So, thank you all for coming, and as you may recall, you are here for a noble cause. At this point of time, we would like to invite the following people to the stage, and my apologies in advance if I don't say your name right. Julie Nestingen, Director of Development, Seva Foundation. Gary Hahn, former Board Chair, Seva Foundation. And Jack Blanks, Executive Director, Seva Foundation. Please come to the stage. They will, ladies and gentlemen, they will give us an overview of Seva Foundation and will explain how the funds were used last year.
Good evening. This is my first close encounter with Bollywood. I'm having a great time. Love really is in the air here. I want to start by thanking everyone who's here tonight. Just by buying a ticket and coming here tonight, you've made a direct investment that will result in a child, an Indian child, having their sight restored. So that's pretty amazing. Again, love is in the air. This is Gary Hahn. I know Gary doesn't know he's going to be on stage tonight, but I want to introduce Gary. He's from Portland, and he's been the chairman of our board for many years. My name's Jack. I'm the executive director, but we couldn't do without our board, and Gary has been supporting us here in Portland for many years.
Thanks, Jack. I'm a long-term Seva donor. I started out in 1980 and was a donor for a number of years. And I went to India and Nepal to see Seva's operations, particularly the one in Lumbini at the border of India and Nepal, and saw my first eye surgeries there. And since then I've seen many eye surgeries and traveled to a lot of the Seva operational centers, particularly in Madurai and Lumbini. Thanks, Jack.
You're most welcome. I also want to extend a huge measure of thanks to Soor Saptak and Sandy for really being the driving force behind the project that we have together. And that project is focusing on providing sight restoring eye care to Indian children. Next slide. Oops. This is a little video that we want to start with.
There was a girl who lost her sight. Because she lost her sight, she couldn't read or learn like the others. She couldn't work to help support her family. Her family became poor. Then Seva came and restored her sight. Now she can learn, she can work, she can see her future. Seva has helped over 3 million people see again.
That's a very short video, 30 seconds, but it tells a big story. And that story is when, as tragic as blindness is, if you can reach a child who has lost their sight or in danger of going blind, you have such a tremendous impact in that they have their whole life ahead of them. They can go to school. A huge burden is lifted off of the shoulder of their family. So while Seva works around the world with all people who need our services, we are especially happy to be able to intervene and serve children around the world as well. I want to give you a little context so you'll understand how childhood blindness fits into the big picture. Very quickly, there's 39 million people in the world who are blind. There's another 245 million who are severely visually impaired. So it's still a big problem in our world. The leading cause is cataract. Cataract can be cured, can be fixed with a simple operation, and over 50% of the people in the world who are blind from cataract, and therefore can actually have their sight restored in most cases. 80% of the blindness in the world is avoidable. We won't go into all the different things that can be done, but cataract is one of the big interventions. And 90% of those people who are blind live in the underdeveloped countries or the developing world. And finally, 2 of every 3 people in the world who are blind or severely visually impaired are women. That's another story for another night. Tonight we want to talk about what Soor Saptak is financing through Seva to restore sight in children. So, what are the stats for kids? Basically, 500,000 children are either born or go blind every year. And if you do the math, that's a kid going blind every minute. There's 1.4 million children who are blind in the world. That's the backlog. If you wonder how you can have 500,000 every year and only 1.4 million blind, it's because over half of the kids in developing countries who go blind or who are born blind don't survive to their 5th birthday. Next slide. So, what about India? I'm going to give you the picture. There's 7.8 million blind. That's 20% of the world's blindness. 63 million people are visually impaired, severely visually impaired, so that they are handicapped from their loss of vision. And 400,000 children are blind in India. Only China and India have the 2 largest concentrations of blind kids in the world because of the virtue of their large population. So, what is Seva? Well, our name, Seva, is a Sanskrit word, as I'm sure you all recognize, and it means selfless service. And the way we provide service in this world is to prevent and cure blindness. We don't just send doctors abroad, but we work in a very comprehensive way. We always partner with local institutions. We really focus on building local capacity so that we leave something behind. We want our programs to engender sustainability. And we support education and outreach at the community level so that people understand why their child is blind and what they can do about it, or why grandma is blind and that you can do something about it. And then finally, because of the imbalance or the inequity in blindness from a gender perspective, we also focus a lot on making sure that services reach women and girls. As a result, we have very high quality, very high volume services around the world, and that's why we've been able to restore sight to over 3 million people in 35 years. Next slide. So how do we reach folks? Through hospitals and through rural clinics, also through school programs and in surgical eye camps. In other words, we work from the tertiary to the secondary to the primary level to make sure that we reach everyone. So Seva works in 20 countries, and I wanted you to see this slide simply because you'll see that a large concentration of our programs are in Asia and in India, but we work in 20 countries today. Next slide. So, the history of Seva in India, our very first program was in India. We started 35 years ago with Aravind Eye Hospital in Madurai. And today we have 25 partner hospitals, and in 2013, this network that we work with and support provided some form of eye care to over 5 million people in the continent of India, in India. So these are all our partners in India, and I want to point out, if you look at the map of Nepal on the northern border, you see Kathmandu. Just north of Bihar, between Bihar and Kathmandu, the project that I'm going to talk about tonight that's being supported by Soor or Saptak lies right on the border of Nepal and India. And the place where it lies is in Lumbini Eye Hospital. It's located very near the birthplace of Buddha. Right on the border. It's actually in Nepal, but 80% of the patients are Indian. If you can click through, you'll see. They see 500,000 patients a year. It's a very comprehensive tertiary hospital that also has a residency program and provides training. Everything is done with local staff. There are no expatriate staff working there, and the hospital has been financially self-sufficient for many years, even though it serves the poor, low-income populations. And again, 80% of all the patients are Indian. This guy, Dr. Arjun Mala, some of you may have met a couple of years ago. Arjun is a pediatric ophthalmologist whose training was supported by Seva starting many years ago. He trained in Nepal, he had some of his education in India, and he came to KCI Institute here in Portland, also under a fellowship sponsored by Seva to, again, add to his knowledge. Dr. Arjun met Sandy Bidet a couple of years ago and told him about the work that he was doing and the fact that most of his patients were Indian children from low-income families, and in fact 80% of his patients are from India, and that there was a real struggle to sometimes treat and serve these kids in the best possible way. Next slide.
In 2012, I visited Lumbini Eye Institute, and I went there specifically to meet with Dr. Arjun Mala. Arjun is one of the doctors that Seva has trained over the last several years to be pediatric ophthalmologist. So the story of this little girl, she's just, I think, less than 8 months old. And she was born with congenital cataracts, blind in both eyes. She came from India. Her young mom had brought her over the border for care. And Arjun was making the point that even though at Lumbini no one is ever turned away for lack of ability to pay, that 80% of their patients are Indian. And the pediatric patients sometimes come with very complicated and complex issues. And while he can do the surgery and they can stay there and that sort of thing, if they need really expensive consumables, the medical supply end of the spectrum, the hospital can't afford those, and very often the families can't either. For example, that little girl, he was able to remove both cataracts successfully, but for a child that small, sometimes they can put a special folding artificial lens in the eye, or they may fit them with glasses to begin with until they get a little bit bigger, and then they can implant these special folding lenses. And they're extremely expensive. They're not the usual lens that we source out of India for adults. And the hospital, they can be in the hundreds of dollars just for the lenses. So she's got glasses right now. You see she has what we call the phakic spectacles, which are strapped on her head. But really, ideally, in the near future, she needs to have a lens implant. Our goal with her at some point would be to implant lenses. Restoring sight to this child means that this child will grow up to be a productive citizen. Hopefully will get educated and live a full life. The impact on the community, the economy, the economic benefit of intervening early with these kids is, it's a no-brainer.
Exciting. So I want to tell you what we've been able to accomplish at the last fundraiser. I think that was in 2012. Soor Saptak raised almost $6,500. And as Sandy said, every single penny went to this project. Not only did Soor or Saptak not take any overhead, but Seva didn't take any overhead. We made sure every penny went to a special fund at Lumbini Eye Hospital, managed by Dr. Arjun Mala, that would provide the extra care that was needed for these kids so that no kid would go home without the very best possible care that he could provide. So let me just tell you quickly what they were able to do. Of the 155 kids that got some form of assistance through the program and had advanced medical care, 32 of them were born with cataracts and had cataract operations. 24 had traumatic cataract, and that's where you get trauma to the eye, usually young boys. You'll see some pictures in a few minutes, who like to play with sticks and stones and get hit in the eye and have a traumatic cataract as a result. Developmental cataract, 15 cases. Corneal perforation, another thing that happens a lot with kids and even adults in that part of the world, where you can definitely lose your sight, lose the eye. And then a whole bunch of other different serious conditions that were treated. So in all, with less than $6,000, because there's still a few $100s in the fund. 155 children got advanced care. And I'm going to show you some of those kids. This little girl, Ramit, is 8 months old, and she had a successful surgery for congenital cataract. She's too young to get artificial lens implants at this time, but she will come back when she's older. She will have glasses like the other little girl you saw for the time being, but when she's a couple of years old, she'll get a lens implant and see just fine. Next slide. This little girl, her eye looks a little red and swollen on the right-hand side. That's because she just had surgery 24 hours before. She also had congenital cataract, and that redness will go away. Her eye will be fine. It's just that these are the pictures that we take to put in the case files. We didn't really take these pictures for a show, so you're seeing what goes in the file. But she's had a cataract operation. And this next little lady, she is 3 years old, and she did get a lens implant all at the same time. So not only did she have her cataract removed in that eye, but she got an artificial lens at the same time. And then I mentioned traumatic cataract, very common in young boys because they're the ones who roughhouse. You can actually see the mature cataract in this young boy's eye on the right-hand side, and then on the other side after the cataract has been removed, and he got a lens, of course. So he's seeing perfectly well as a result of the operation. Next slide. This little girl, Priya, she had had her cataracts removed in India, but they did not put lenses in where she went. So she came sometime later to Lumbini, and she had an artificial lens implanted in order to give her. And I looked at her record. She has 20/20 vision as a result. Next slide. This young lady, 16 years old. This is strabismus. You know it as being cross-eyed. That's a muscle surgery. But can you imagine being 16 at that very special age and having a cosmetic issue where your eyes are not straight? Her eye's still a little red, but you can see it's already straight. Within a couple of days, the redness will go away. She will not only see well, but she will look well. So this is also very important. And then finally, I just put MD in here because he has such an incredible smile. He also had a traumatic cataract, which you can see in the right-hand eye, that white disc from an injury and successful operation, and now he's seeing perfectly well again. So, as Sandy said, everybody who came here tonight is supporting this program. Any of you who may want to provide an additional donation, they're always welcome. We would be more than happy to, well, actually we have brochures and we have information on a table outside, but we could also take a donation tonight. It's purely up to you, but as Sandy said, 100% goes to these kids, and we can do a lot with a little. I want to thank you once again for having us here tonight, and love is in the air. Let the show go on.
Thank you, Mr. Blanks. That was very informative.